Here we go. Good. Excellent. Turn my tones off. Welcome. Bear with me 1 second, please. There we go. Welcome. Happy New Year. I'm Mary Jo Feely with Fourth Dimension Healing in Stillwater, Minnesota. I'm also the director of the Center for Crystal and Healing Studies, which is my online school, and I'll talk a bit more about that school at the end of our time together. But I am just really thrilled to be able to be talking rocks with you again. I do this typically once a month. It's going to alternate between Wednesdays and Thursdays, usually mid to a little bit later in the month. And it'll be from 6 to 7 p.m. Central Time. I'm in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm in Minnesota. And so we are in the middle of winter right now. So if you are listening to me from the Southern Hemisphere, enjoy your warmth. We miss it. And we are so grateful that somebody is able to enjoy the beautiful warm weather that we are able to experience. So today I have received a number of questions that I'm going to work through. There are a couple things I wanted to actually follow up from the previous crystal Q&A that we had, and that would have been in November because we took December off. And just to let you know, if you are joining in on the Zoom, you are able to go ahead and chat, and I can answer those questions. Otherwise, you can always reach out to me through my website, and the links are always below this video, as well as to how you can submit questions for next time as well. So anyway, the first thing I want to do a quick follow-up is on the Mohs hardness scale, because I do get a lot of questions about it, and some of the people that I work with sometimes think I might be a little bit of a kind of a rock geek or a crystal geek. I do like to bring in some of the science. It's not all woo-woo. This is a very ancient practice that we are reconnecting with in our time, and crystal healing is considered complementary. It's an alternative form of healing, and it is developed and designed to support a more traditional healthcare. So keep that in mind as you're working with crystals and stones. So the Mohs hardness scale, I'm going to show you again a graph that I showed, I think it was in November. It's been a long time ago, hasn't it? And what this graph demonstrates is that there is a hardness scale to stones. And so on this end of the graph is 1, which is a very, very soft stone, all the way over to 10, which is the hardest mineral, and that is diamond. So over here on this low end, we're going to have the very first number 1 is talc, and each subsequent number or hardness number actually within the scale is a way of what damages or what scratches the next stone. So when we take a look at 1 and we have talc, the next stone is going to be gypsum. Now we know that as selenite. So if you have selenite, that is a form of gypsum. You know from touching it, it's a very soft, dusty stone. It's the kind of stone that will definitely get nicked up with harder stones. And it is also a stone that does not tolerate getting wet very well. So when we're working with hardness factors, there are some practical aspects to knowing those hardness factors. Knowing the hardness also is helpful as you are exploring crystals and gemstones. A piece of sodalite and a piece of lapis lazuli can look very, very much the same, but they feel quite different. A piece of calcite and a piece of celestite can look very similar, but they feel quite different. And so those are just that's just one way of bringing in a way to assess and determine what stone you might be working with. So we have gypsum 2. The third one over is calcite, okay? So calcite will scratch gypsum or selenite. Selenite will scratch tell. Do you see how that's working? So we're going backwards to what is affected or what is scratched by the stone or the mineral directly beneath it. Number 4 on the scale is fluorite. And then there's apatite is number 5. At 6 is feldspar. 7 is quartz. And there is a large amount of quartz available. Some of it is crystal clear rose, clear quartz, also known as rock crystal. And there are other kinds of quartz like rose quartz or tiger's eye, smoky quartz, citrine, a number of different forms of the silicon dioxide that comprise the quartz in number 7. And so it's not uncommon to have a wide variety of stones that all are somewhere around the 7 on the Mohs scale. 8 is topaz. I'm losing my place. Corundum is 9. Corundum, if you've heard my other videos, I've talked about it. Corundum, when it is red, we know as ruby. And corundum, when it is any other color, it is known and referred to as sapphire. And so if you've ever had a piece of ruby or a piece of sapphire, you can tell that it's a very, very hard stone. That would definitely scratch up any of the softer stones beneath it. Then number 10 is diamond. That is the hardest mineral that we are aware of. And I want you to notice that, and I tried using a highlighter to maybe help point this out to you. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10 shoots way up here. So there is quite a difference between 9 and 10. In fact, there's probably more of a difference in hardness between 9 and 10 than there is between 1 and 9. So that's an example and a little bit more information about the Mohs hardness scale. If you have other questions, you can feel free to just send me a chat or send me an email and I can help you answer your question a little bit more. So that's just, again, one way of us becoming aware of what are the properties of the stones that we're working with, okay? So I'm going to get right to the questions for this month. And this is a great one to kick off our new year crystal Q&A. The question is, what stones would you recommend for the new year? And so, you know, that's really a great question, because when we think about the new year, and we're talking about the calendar year within the United States and within throughout the world, where we're following the January through December calendar. We're not talking Chinese New Year. We're not talking the Tibetan New Year. You know, there are all kinds of different New Years that we can take a look at. We are talking about the calendar that we follow. And one of the first thoughts I had when it came to answering this question is shungite. If you do not currently have a piece of shungite or work with shungite, my suggestion, my recommendation would be this is a really great stone for you to consider beginning to work with. This is a piece of elite shungite. It's about 97, 98% carbon. And this particular piece is the one that I always have sitting next to my computer, because it does help to dissipate the electromagnetic frequencies and helps clear the energy field. Now, there are a couple different forms of shungite. The elite is very fragile. It can't be shaped. It can't be polished. It just crumbles. And so there are classifications of shungite. The next would be regular shungite. It has about 50 to 52 to 54% carbon. And so it is really a great stone to work with, to have the shungite properties around with you and yet be able to maybe be put in a pocket or created with beads or bracelet or slip inside a pillowcase and knowing you're not going to be damaging it. So shungite is one that I would really encourage you to take a look at and learn more about. It has some really strong detoxification properties as well. And it comes out of Karelia, which is in Russia. Also, when I thought about this question, I thought, okay, so what would be some great stones to work with for the new year? It always has to do with intention. Intention really drives the bus when it comes to working with a gemstone or crystal, very much like intention is really important when we are setting our minds on attaining goals, becoming successful, stepping out and doing things that maybe are new to us, that we're a little bit timid to try, and yet it's the intention that we're placing forward and then the follow through that helps us be successful. So when I'm thinking of the whole process of setting an intention, the whole process of a new year, the word transformation just kept coming back to me and back to me. So I thought, how about if I were to talk about 3 stones that can be very, very helpful when it comes to transformation? And the first one is Shiva Lingam. So here is a piece of Shiva Lingam, comes out of India. Shiva Lingams represent both the masculine and feminine energies. In fact, I have a Shiva right back here today as well. So when we're working with Shiva, it can help us recognize the masculine forward movement energy, that creative manifestation energy. It also helps us recognize the feminine, which is the resting, it's the allowing, it's the patience, and it's the waiting. So those of us in the Northern Hemisphere are in this kind of waiting time. We're being very patient as yet another storm rolls through and we get more snow. And there will be a time later in the spring and summer when we are in more of an active phase. So when we're taking a look at transformation and we're thinking of an overarching intention for the whole year, it could be that a piece of Shiva, working with the Shiva Lingam, could be really very powerful. I work with a system of elements of earth, fire, water, wind, and storm. If you're not familiar with the system that I work with, check out some of my other YouTube videos because I do go into detail about those. Shiva is a storm element stone. And so it is about transformation. It's about being in the eye of the storm, being at peace, being calm, and yet there's a lot of wildness going on around us, and there's a lot of energy and action going on around us, yet we're calm. So there are lots of aspects to storm that I think can be, of course, very transformational. So that's one of the stones. Another stone that I think could be really a wonderful one to work with in the new year is K2. Now, K2 is a form of granite, and it also has these little pockets or little spheres of azurite. This is a relatively rare stone. It comes out of Pakistan. It also resonates with the storm element. So you're going to notice that the stones that I'm talking about when it comes to transformation and for the new year are storm element stones. K2 has this ability to help us create and maintain a strong energy field. It could be that we hold it in our hand while we're on the phone at work. It could be that we slip it inside our pillowcase. It could be that we're working with K2 and a crystal grid, which I've talked about in some of my other videos, as well as some of my other crystal conversation live Q&A calls. So you can check those out also on my YouTube channel. So anyway, K2 would be one that I think could be really helpful. Now, the third one, along the same theme of transformation, of storm, is indigo gabbro. Let me hold it here for you to see. So indigo gabbro is a kind of a stone of mystery, and it's a stone of deep, hidden inner wisdom. When we are quiet enough, that's that yin, that feminine energy, when we are quiet enough and settle into our breath and into our heart space, more of that higher guidance drops down into our consciousness so that we're actually able to access it. And Indigo Gabbro is very, very helpful as a meditative assistant or a meditative friend. Holding it, keeping it on, perhaps you have a little table, or you have an area where you have maybe some icons, or maybe a candle, maybe it's a little shrine. However it is that you pray, however it is that you are quiet, how you are meditative, bringing a piece of Indigo Gabbro, for example, is into that practice is another way. So when we're talking about stones for the new year, I would say the intention is transformation. We're always in the process of moving forward with kind of a newer, more improved version of ourselves, which means it's about getting our ego out of the way and allowing that inner wisdom, the inner compassion, and the inner love to be able to shine forth. So I would suggest those 4 stones, the 3 transformational stones of Shiva Lingam, Indigo Gabbro, and K2. K2 is also sometimes seen as K2 Jasper. And then also the shungite of some form to be able to have that available to you. I think that could be really helpful. Okay. Check the chat. Okay. Now, here's another question. It's kind of a follow-up question, which I believe we might have talked about last in November. If not November, it would have been in October. And the question is, I want to learn more about how to use a pendulum. Can you give me some ideas how to do it? All right. So working with a pendulum takes practice. And what working with the pendulum is doing is helping us access the subtle energy field. It could be our own subtle energy field. It could be the subtle energy field of another person. If you are, maybe you're a crystal healer. Maybe you're an energy healer, a Reiki practitioner. Maybe you're working with a therapy practice. Maybe you are a nutritional or health coach. All of those modalities can definitely benefit from the use of a pendulum, because the pendulum touches into the subtle energy, that subconscious messaging that we simply just cannot always access at the conscious level. So when I talk about pendulums, and I do teach some pendulum courses, I don't have a full-on pendulum course yet. Perhaps that might be rolling out in 2023. I'm keeping that hint. But I do have a service I offer. It's called a mentoring session. It's an hour long, and I have definitely had clients work with me with the pendulum with a mentoring session so that they can spend some time really getting to understand how to work with the pendulum and to be able to trust the answer that they're getting. So a pendulum is essentially anything that's heavy. I'm going to move it maybe right here. There you go. Anything that's heavy that's attached to a string. It could be a paper clip on a piece of thread, but there's not a lot of weight to that, so it's very difficult to work with that really successfully, because I have tried that. Could be something very heavy like a plumb line that a carpenter might use as they're building a house. They want to make sure that that structure is perpendicular to the ground, right? So what we're going to be working with when we're working with a pendulum is allowing the energy that is flowing for me through my energy field out the hand chakra, right in the center, down through the fingers, and then I am going to have it give me an answer, either yes or no. Here's the tricky part. We can always override a pendulum. Hands down, I can override a pendulum every time if I choose to. Here's the intention again that I was just talking about a little bit ago. If we stand in front of, let's say, 2 pieces of fruit, and we want to know, do we want that fruit or that fruit? Which is the best fruit for us? If one of them is a fruit that I don't really care for, but it may be helpful, and the other one is a fruit I really like, it would be helpful. If I really want to have the one I like, I can make that pendulum answer that way. So we have to be absolutely neutral. When it comes to working with gemstones and crystals, working with a pendulum is really effective in finding out and determining which stone would be helpful. So let's take this little dish of the 3 stones. We have the Shiva, we have the Indigo Gabbro, and we have the K2. So to set an intention, you have to be very clear. And I'll say, even before we ask the pendulum to guide us in these particular stones and which one would be most helpful to work with, we have to understand which is what the answer the pendulum is giving us is. We want to know a yes and a no, and I'm not going to go into detail about that, but I can tell you that my yes is a clockwise circle, and my no is a back and forth straight line. So I'm going to simply ask the pendulum for myself, which of these 3 stones would be most beneficial for me to work with this evening. Even though I don't have any intention necessarily of working with these, I have not engaged at all in it. One of them is going to be helpful and beneficial to me if I so choose to work with it. So I'm going to ask the question, which of these 3 stones would be most helpful for me to work with tonight? All right. I am getting a clockwise spin on the K2. And this is a stone that I work with on a regular basis. So if I want to go ahead and work with a storm element stone tonight, which I may because it is suggesting that I do so, I will work with the K2. The pendulum, because I asked a question about myself, is actually tapping into my inner energy field. There's something about the K2 and its properties that will help me to balance my energy field a bit later this evening. So I will choose right now to go ahead and do that a little bit later. Now, the other thing when we're working with somebody else is we can ask the same question: which of these 3 stones would be most helpful for whoever it is that we're working with? So if you're an energy healer or Reiki practitioner, or maybe you are a health coach and you are working with a client to make some choices that their own subtle energy field, that inner healer, is bringing forth, you can work with that. Simply make sure that the question is very clear and that you have absolutely no engagement whatsoever, no intent on what the outcome is, okay? So this is an example of sodalite pendulum. They don't have to be stones. Here's a red jasper. But sometimes working with stones as pendulums can be really very helpful. Even I just realized that the quartz that I'm wearing today as a necklace is something that sometimes I will take off of this heavier chain, put it on a thinner chain, and then use that as a pendulum too. So that is a very short answer as to how we can work with pendulums. If you really are very interested, please give me a call, send me a chat, send me an email. We will talk more. Perhaps mentoring session might be what you're looking for so that you can gain some experience and some understanding and develop and grow some of your skills when working with the pendulum. Okay? Thank you for that question. Here is a great question. For those of us living in Minnesota, winter is a time without much sun and with light deprivation. Is there anything I can use in my prayer and meditation time that can help? Well, as I mentioned, we are smack dab in the middle of winter here. And so one of the things that came to my awareness within this question is that sometimes it is hard as the days get long. It's dark for a long time. We tend to not have the energy that we typically do during the spring and summer months. And that's actually quite natural to go through these rhythms. It can be a little difficult because we can get into a little bit of a funk, a little bit of, I don't want to say depression, although certainly some people who do deal with and work with depression sometimes have a little bit harder time in this darker time of the year. And so with that caveat and knowing that there is this sense of the invitation to balance the mental field perhaps a little bit more when we're feeling a little bit wishing there was more sun. It's getting a little old. One of the first things I think of are stones that resonate with the wind element, because the wind element does associate itself very much with the mental processing within our body. I want to say just a couple things about emotional and mental energies. It is not uncommon for us to kind of glop emotional and mental needs all together in one pot. And while they do really have very similar qualities, one has to do with emotions, one has to do with thought processes. So I can, let's say, for example, have a repetitive thought that's really bothering me. It gets to the point that I start feeling sad. There you go. I have the thought, and now I'm feeling sad. I have the emotion. So now we've got both aspects engaged. I definitely separate out emotion and mental processing because they land in different parts of the energy field. And so in my practice over the years, I've really found it very helpful to be very mindful of when is the healing that's arising, the healing need that is arising, when is that landing in the mental field? That could be perhaps the brow and the crown chakra. If we're taking a look at those energy centers in the head, it could actually be in the mental field, which is one of several energy bodies that we have wrapped around our own physical body. With this question, I'm going to read it again. For those of us living in Minnesota, winter is a time without much sun and with light deprivation. Is there anything I can use in my prayer and meditation time that can help? Yes. Working with wind element stones, working with those during that prayer or meditation time can be very, very helpful. The first one I want to show you is blue apatite. Apatite, you heard me reference that with the Mohs hardness scale, didn't you? So apatite is just this phenomenal healer when it comes to helping to clear out the mental clutter and open up some insight so that we can have a calmer state. So working with this, meditating with, holding it in your hand while you're meditating, keeping it in that little space, perhaps next to a prayer book. Maybe you have a little statue of a spiritual guide or guru. It could be Jesus, it could be Buddha, it could be Black Elk. There are going to be ways that you're going to incorporate this kind of a stone into your spiritual practice, whatever that may look like. So I would say blue apatite could be a really good one. You're going to notice that several of these stones are blue. Here is a piece of sodalite. Sodalite is a wonderful stone, very much like the blue apatite. This one has this little extra spark to it, I've found in my work. It just seems to, for me, and remember, I'm going to say this from time to time, it's my experience. This has a little deeper kind of oomph. This is a very subtle and soft and gentle support. So what you're looking for, you may find, as you work with maybe a couple different stones to see which one is the one that is feeling right to you. There's another stone. This is lapis lazuli. A little tricky to see with my lighting. I apologize. Got some pyrite in it and white calcite. So the white is pulling down those spiritual energies, and then the pyrite is pulling up some of that earth energy. So it can be really balancing. And it also is very, very effective in that, particularly that brow chakra. And it helps get that clarity and that open, I see what's going on type of effect down into the heart space, which is really important. Another stone that could be effective would be a piece of amethyst. Now, this is banded amethyst or chevron amethyst. It has some white quartz in it. And whenever we have a stone that has white in it, it's a reminder that it is drawing down some of those higher spiritual energies. And amethyst is a beautiful stone to work with way up at the very top of the head in that crown chakra. And then one other one that I wanted to show you. This is snowflake obsidian. So obsidian is actually volcanic glass. So this is actually a stone that really resonates with fire, because when we think about lava, right? Obsidian is volcanic glass. This really formed really fast. In fact, there are no crystals in this. This is just kind of, we call it a crystal, but it's not. It's a mineraloid. It's simply a mass of glass that's been naturally formed. And you'll notice that it has these white kind of snowflake speckles. That's the piece that helps transform this obsidian, which normally would be very connected with the lower part of the energy system down at that root, that second and that third chakra. But this really is dropping those spiritual energies down into that mind space as well. So those would be my recommendations. If you're looking for some stones to be able to help you move through some of this dark time, working with stones that resonate with the wind element, highly effective. And you can take a look. If you went out to my online shop, you can sort by the various elements, and it'll show you which of the stones that I carry, for example, resonate with wind. That's another way that you can work with my website. Use it to learn about the stones you're looking for, and use it, please, to learn about the stones that you already have. So I really want to help you learn about the stones so you can work with them and they can be in partnership with you as you heal. Okay? Now here, this was a great question. How many stones should I use at the same time? Well, that is the $500 question, isn't it? We can easily feel like we have to work with a lot of rocks. And sometimes we feel like if we're only working with one rock or maybe two rocks, is that not enough? So I have a couple of different ways of answering this question so that you can really begin to trust yourself a little bit more when you are working with your gemstones and crystals as to how much is helpful and how much is maybe too much. So one of the first things I want to show you is that I brought 7 stones. I brought a red jasper. Okay. I'll lay those out here. Carnelian. Golden tiger's eye. That's pretty. Rose quartz. Amazonite. Sodalite. We just got done talking about that one, didn't we? And a piece of chevron amethyst. We just talked about that one too. These 7 stones represent the 7 chakras: our root chakra, our sacral chakra, solar plexus, heart chakra, throat chakra, brow, and crown chakra. These all 7 are examples of stones that you can work with at the same time. It could be that you want to really spend a little bit of time with your crystals to be able to balance your chakras. I would encourage you then, if that's what you would like to do, to find 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes is even better, to be able to lay down comfortably. You can fall asleep if you want, but you don't have to. I would suggest that you have pillows supporting, maybe under your knees, maybe under your head, so that you're comfortable. And then place stone. I'm going to use these. Red jasper resonates with earth. Place it maybe down around your knees. It supports your root chakra, which comes off your tailbone. It also helps connect down with your feet. Okay, so place that perhaps at your knees. The carnelian resonates with fire. Place that on your lower abdomen, below your belly button, and above your pubic bone. And then this tiger's eye, I'm going to have you place that on your 3rd chakra, which is above your belly button, but below that V right here where our rib cage is. So it's right in that upper abdomen. Rose quartz is going to go right over your heart. Amazonite, if you're working again, we're working with these 7, it's going to go right around your throat. It might rest on your throat. It might be a little bit lower, whatever you're comfortable with. Sodalite is going to be at your brow chakra. You can either place it here on your brow chakra, or you can place it behind your head on your brow chakra. I will add that sometimes placing a stone directly on the brow chakra can be a little intense, so just place it behind. And then we have amethyst that's going to be up at the top of the head. And you don't have to like put it on the top of your head and then figure out how you're going to keep it up there, either with a cap or, a headband or something. It's not necessary. You can just lay it on the pillow, an inch or 2 above your head. Then you are able to just rest for about 15 or 20 minutes. 30 is, ideal, because it really lets you kind of settle in and then be able to come back out of that meditation and allow these 7 stones to help balance your energy field. If, for example, you really are experiencing some physical issues in your life, maybe some emotional or mental issues, and they're just kind of getting in the way of day-to-day life, I would get rid of these top ones and simply work with your root, your sacral, and your solar plexus chakra. I hope that this is showing you that you can work with a lot of stones at the same time. In fact, it's not uncommon to work with body layouts and body arrays of stones that are placed on or around the body, and it's not uncommon to have a number of stones around you. I do teach some advanced crystal classes through my online school, and that's where if you wanted to really work on that and perhaps even work with crystals with somebody else, you could learn how to do that. So another way we can decide how to work with a stone, I think of another beautiful way to work with a couple stones at the same time. Here is a piece of regular shungite. Remember I showed you the delete before? Here it is over here on my computer, helping to deal with all the energies. So this is a piece of regular shungite. And if we hold the shungite in our left hand, shungite is a stone that is very, it's yin, it's feminine, it's a very kind of resting kind of energy. Place that in your left hand, and then whatever other stone you'd like to work with, it will help exponentiate and balance out some of those energies that you're working with. So here is an example of a piece of orange calcite. Calcite is 3 on the Mohs hardness scale. That was one of the words or one of the types of stones I referenced. So put the stone you want to work with in your right hand. So I'm going to set down the shungite, and I have just the calcite here. That's fine. That I can work with. I can allow it to kind of bring forth the shifting, the balancing. And if I add a piece of regular shungite in my other hand, it can help balance those shifts that are taking place. And I want you to notice that these two stones are about the same mass, okay? So if you have a large piece of regular shungite, it's going to be harder to balance a small piece of, in this case, the orange calcite. So think about matching your sizes a little bit. Now here, for example, is a piece of ruby fusite. Ruby fusite, beautiful stone to support the heart. Very beautiful stone to support emotional healing. So before, when I was talking about sorting out the mental, the emotional aspects, if I'm having some recurring thoughts that are kind of bothering me, and now I'm feeling very sad, and I'm feeling very, I'm kind of beating myself up, and I'm just really feeling very unsettled about that, I could work with a piece of, for example, ruby fusite to be able to work in that emotional heart space. And when I work with shungite, regular shungite, it's tumbled, holding those both at the same time, it helps to balance those shifts. So those are just a couple ways that I could offer to suggest how many stones we should work with at the same time. And so I hope that answered your question. It was a great question. And I do get that question a lot as to how to know when too much is too much. And I'll tell you, if you're getting the sense that too much is going on, then go with it. Too much is going on. So here is a great question. It says, you've talked in other videos about writing in a journal when working with gems. What does exactly that mean? And any tips to get started would be great. Thanks. I think that really actually is a good segue from what we've been talking about, because I've been talking about working with the stones, right? You work with the 7 chakra stones. You might be working with regular shungite and some ruby fusite. What do I mean by working with? So have a journal. This I love. Isn't that great? Look at all that beautiful banded agate. And this is just beautiful carnelian. Have some kind of a journal, notebook, something that's dedicated to your crystal work, your gemstone healing work. And so just keep it for that. There are a few things you're going to want to make note of. Make note of the date. Make note of what is the issue that's going on and what is your intention for healing. Then write about the stone first. And so let's take a look at this piece of carnelian. Actually, not only write it down, but describe it a little bit for yourself. You're only doing this for yourself. And I might say dark orange, some banding with white, 3 or 4 little pits. Because you can't see it very well, but there are these little nicks in here. The reason I'm doing that is because then I can go back and look, and I can go, which of my 3 pieces of carnelian that are in my bowl was I working with that day? So that's why you can be very descriptive. The other thing I'd encourage you to do is to learn about some of the science, a little bit of the geology. So carnelian is silicon dioxide. So write that down. Write anything else that you think would be helpful. Write its hardness, being a quartz. It's 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. And that slowly is going to help you glean more information from the stones, from the work you're doing with them. And then now it's time to work with the stone. So you go back to the intention of, it could be a sense of moving forward in a new direction. Maybe it's a relationship issue. Maybe it's a health issue. And then sit with the stone. Left hand is a great place to put it. Right hand is a great place to put it. You can lay it down and put it on your heart. And then just bring your awareness to the stone, and then allow yourself to shift into this resting place. And spend a few minutes there. Maybe spend 10 or 15 minutes there. Then pick up your pen and start writing. I noticed this. What did you experience? Sometimes a stone will hit you like that. As soon as you pick it up and drop into meditation, you go, whoa, what was that? That is a beautiful insight. That is a message that that stone is helping to connect energetically with some of those blocked areas, some of the areas that you're working on balancing. And it's doing what it needs to do. When it happens like that, you can actually set the stone down. It's resonated enough with your energy field so that you don't have to keep working with it, but you're going to want to make sure you make note of that. And there might be a time where you feel like, you know what, I want to work with stone again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. One of my crystal healing teachers, as I studied with this person, we worked through months of one stone per week, every day working with that stone, noticing more and more and more about what it was teaching us about ourselves and about our healing. So there are some really beautiful ways that we can do a lot of healing, and it is definitely worth having a dedicated journal, because then you can go back over time and take a look at, it could be the same intention that you've been working with, and as you reread it, you go, oh my gosh, look at that. I was working with lapis 3 of those 5 times. And so that's a good reminder too. So I hope that helps you. And again, this is the sort of thing that you'll grow with as you continue to explore working with gemstones and crystals for healing. Okay. But this is a great question. Kind of a follow-up from a previous crystal Q&A that I did. It says, in one of your other videos, you talked about not putting crystals into drinking water. I've been hearing my friends talk about gem water. Is this the same thing? I want to try to do this, but I want to do it safely. Please help. Well, thank you for sending up a flare. I really appreciate that. Yes, gem waters is a very easy way to be able to work with gemstones and waters, to be able to benefit from the healing properties, the vibrational properties of the stones and crystals. And there are a couple ways that we can do it. One is very safe, one is a little sketchy. I'm going to show you the sketchy way first. I'm going to ask you, please do not do this. This is a beautiful example of gem waters, right? We have this picture of water. We've got some stones in there. As I look down there, we've got chrysocolla, we have labradorite, amethyst, we've got iolite, lepidolite, rhodonite, and lapis lazuli, okay? Lovely. I would not drink this. Please don't do it this way. Some of these stones are toxic. We don't want to have any potential of the chemical compositions of the crystals getting in there. And a lot of times you're going to see people plopping in stones and just then drinking. I just say, please don't do that. This is called the direct method. I do not support that, please. Here's what I have talked about, and I'm going to show you. This is the indirect method. We have a bowl that has water in it, In the bowl with the water in it is a jar, and within the jar are the stones. So I have turquoise and lapis and pink opal. So the turquoise and lapis are toxic, for sure. I sure don't want to have any of those chemicals in my body. So by placing them inside a glass container, inside a glass bowl, now I can work with this as a gem water. And I would say, if you were going to do it this way, cover it up with plastic wrap, cover it up with some kind of a non-toxic covering, and it should not have any writing on it. And then bring it into your hands, close to your heart, and spend a few minutes with a deep intention about the gem waters that you're creating, because it's not just about putting rocks in a jar, in the water, putting it in the fridge overnight, and something magical happens. It's not about that. It is about being very intentional about why we are choosing the stones we're choosing. And if I made a gem water with these 3 stones, I'm going to take my journal. I'm going to write the date, the gem water, what the stones were, what each of the properties were, what each of the characteristics of those particular stones were, and then set my intention, and then make note of what I notice as I work with that water later. So the indirect method using the jar is the safest way to do it. The direct method with rocks just put in water, I do not support at all. I know some people do that, but it's definitely not necessary when you have a very safe way of doing it. All right, good. There were 2 stones I actually had pulled out also to answer this question. Here's a piece of clear quartz, tumbled, no raw edges. It technically is a safe stone. Here we have malachite, beautiful. I love malachite. Lots of copper, kind of toxic. I'm not going to put either of these in the water, even though this is a relatively safe stone. I'm always going to use the indirect method. Okay, there you have it. Okay, hey, this question just is going to tie in really nicely with what we've been talking about. It says, how do I know when to stop healing with a crystal? Like, I've used it for long enough. Okay, beautiful question. So I have this piece of amethyst, okay? If I am working with this crystal to learn about it, to see what it brings me, I may work with this particular crystal for a week or 2, every day, maybe a month, every day, every other day, so that I'm learning to develop a relationship with it. I'm learning what it brings me. And this piece of amethyst and this piece of amethyst are quite different. Even though they're the same species, they have different properties when it comes to what they're doing with me. So if you decide that you want to work with a stone to learn about it, work with it on a regular basis, maybe every day or 2, maybe a couple, 3 times a week, and the stone will let you know. And the stone will let you know because you will be journaling. You will be writing down the impressions you're getting from that inner healer, from your subconscious, that inner aspect of you, that you will get the hint, you're done working with me. It could be that you are going to work with malachite because you have some arthritis and your wrist is hurting and you're going to just slip it right in by that sore place and you're going to work with it for a day or so. And again, you're going to have a general sense of knowing when it's done. So tonight, I've really been talking about having an intention and getting into that space where you're a little quieter and you can hear your inner guidance. That's the beauty. That's the responsibility of working with gemstones and crystals. So regardless of what I say, regardless of what anybody else says, when you are working with the stones, you will know when it's time to set it aside. And it could be that you're really drawn to just one particular kind of stone for a while and not really interested at all in working with other stones. Then work with it. You'll get the hint that, you know what? I think I've worked with this long enough. I don't seem to have that block or that worry that I had or that pain as much as I had before. So being intentional. When are we choosing to hold a piece of regular shungite in one hand to help support and balance the healing properties of the other stone? And when do we just get a sense, no, don't need that today? So I hope that this has been helpful. It may be that I'm asking or that I'm generating more questions, which I suppose is fine because we have next month to be able to explore these questions. And of course, you can always email me or chat with me ahead of time as well. When I take a look at what we've been talking about this evening, we reviewed and kind of revisited the Mohs hardness scale, and you saw how you can bring that into your journaling practice as you're actually learning more about the stones. We learned about and talked about how to work with stones to help move us through some of this dark time. For those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, it's physically dark, but it could be that if you're listening to this and you're in the Southern Hemisphere, that you are experiencing a dark time within your life, even though it may not physically be dark. And you could benefit from some of those mind supporting wind element stones as well. We touched on the pendulums and how to work with the pendulum and understand how a pendulum can give us the information that's at that subtle energy level as long as we get ourselves out of the way. We talked about stones for the new year, and I brought forth some suggestions around transformation that you can think about. We talked about sometimes you're going to use a lot of stones because you're working on a layout. You're working with an arrangement of stones on or around your body. And sometimes you might be working with one stone because you're learning to connect with that stone and see what it has to bring you. And we revisited how to safely create a gem water. Now, if you're really interested in learning a lot about crystal healing, I do have a number of crystal courses in my online school, the Center for Crystal and Healing Studies, and I do have a crystal healer certification program. That program can be completed within a year, and it includes advanced training as well as mentorship with me, very intense mentorship over several months. So those possibilities are always there. Also, if you've not seen either on social media or on my YouTube channel, I have some very short little videos about various gemstones and crystals. It's called Rock Talk, and I try to put one of those videos out every week and a half, something like that. So take a look at that. That's a good way for you to be able to learn and build your vocabulary and your understanding of gemstones and crystals. Our next get together will be on Thursday, February 23rd from 6 to 7 p.m. That I'll be answering questions that are continuing to come in throughout the month. So if you have any, go ahead and just submit questions right through my webpage. And I hope that you have found this helpful. Reach out to me, chat through my webpage, send me an email, go ahead and give me a call, whatever works for you. I really would like to help you continue to be able to embrace the inner healing that is arising for you, and to do so in this ancient practice of crystal healing. For now, I simply wish you many blessings. Be well.